Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. If you enjoy stories that leave you with goosebumps and lessons to carry through life, you're in the right place. 15 years. That's how long I gave Apex Dynamics 15 years of late nights, missed birthdays, skipped holidays, and pouring every ounce of my creativity into their success. In return, they gave me a corner office with a decent view of the city skyline, a reputation as one of the brightest innovators in the industry, and a salary that kept my bills paid. But most importantly, they gave me the freedom to work on a project I believed would change everything, an adaptive, predictive algorithm capable of learning faster and more efficiently than anything on the market. It was my baby, my legacy. Or so I thought. It was a Tuesday morning when the truth came to me, not in some dramatic confrontation, but in the quiet ping of an incoming email. I'd been sorting through my inbox, deleting the usual flood of CC'd chains I barely had time to skim, when I saw it, an internal thread from the executive board. My name wasn't on the recipient list, so I can only assume someone accidentally included me by mistake. The subject line was chilling in its casual cruelty. IP ownership strategy, Whitmore project. Curiosity froze my hand over the mouse, but I clicked. The thread was several messages deep, with Martin Ellison, the CEO, leading the discussion. The words punched through me like a cold wind. Once Clara's work reaches the final testing phase, we'll initiate a full IP claim under company ownership. HR will restructure her role to minimize her influence, easing her out before she files anything independently. I read it again, slower this time. My chest tightened as I scrolled further. They'd been planning this for months, tying my algorithm to Apex's name, then firing me under the guise of company realignment. No mention of the years I'd spent building it. No credit for the countless breakthroughs I'd made on my own time. Just a clinical, calculated plan to erase me from my own creation. For a few moments, I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the glow of my screen while the office buzzed around me. The sound of printers, the chatter from the sales team, the distant hum of the coffee machine, it all felt muffled, like I was underwater. Then the shock gave way to something else. Not fear. Not even sadness. It was a slow, steady heat that curled in my stomach and sharpened into resolve. They thought they were smarter than me. What Martin and his polished boardroom cronies didn't know was that the algorithm they were about to steal wasn't the whole picture. Months earlier, I'd realized how vulnerable my position was, so I started working quietly at home on a more advanced version 2.0, if you will. It had the same foundational code, but with crucial enhancements that made it significantly more powerful. And this time, every line of code, every idea, and every breakthrough was documented and time-stamped under my own name. 3 weeks before that email, I'd already filed the patent for version 2.0 with my name as the sole inventor. Not Apex Dynamics. Not a joint ownership. Just me. The patent was pending approval, but the confirmation letter sat in my home office drawer, a silent shield between me and their plans. I didn't tell anyone. Not my colleagues. Not even my closest friend at the company, Hannah from Analytics, who'd been with me since my early days here. It wasn't that I didn't trust her, it was that I didn't trust anyone once money and power were involved. I'd seen enough in this industry to know that loyalty often wilted under the heat of opportunity. For the next few weeks, I played my role perfectly. I showed up to meetings. I shared updates on the original algorithm, keeping version 2.0 locked tight on my encrypted drive at home. I even smiled during our Friday innovation lunches, where Martin would pat me on the back in front of the others like I was his prize scientist. If only they knew. One evening, after another round of polite but pointless meetings, I drove across town to a quiet, modern office building where Gregory Sullivan was waiting for me. Gregory was the CEO of Stratagem Innovations, Apex Dynamics' biggest competitor and the one company Martin feared the most. We'd met once at a tech conference, and he'd expressed interest in my work, but I'd brushed him off at the time. Now, I saw the value in rekindling that conversation. Gregory was a sharp man, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of calm confidence that didn't need to fill the room with noise. When I laid out my situation, he didn't interrupt, just listened intently, his fingers steepled under his chin. By the time I explained that I owned the patent for version 2.0 and was open to an exclusive licensing agreement, I saw the spark in his eyes. Within 2 weeks, we had an airtight deal. Stratagem would acquire exclusive rights to my patent, pay me a 7-figure signing bonus, offer me substantial equity in the company, and make me their chief innovation officer. On top of that, I'd earn ongoing royalties from every use of the algorithm. It was more than a lifeline, it was the perfect counterstrike. The final touch came when Gregory suggested timing the press release. We would announce Stratagem's acquisition of my technology and my new role on the very day I left Apex Dynamics. It wasn't just business, it was art. A clean, surgical strike at the heart of Martin's empire. In the days leading up to it, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The kind of calm that comes when you know the ending of the story but the other characters are still fumbling through Act 2. Martin summoned me to his office on a Monday morning, his smile tight and professional. The conversation played out exactly as I'd imagined. "Clara, we've had to make some difficult decisions regarding restructuring." The rest was corporate poetry, phrases like company direction, resource reallocation, and future vision peppered between hollow reassurances that my contributions had been valued. I nodded politely, keeping my face neutral. Inside, I was counting down the hours. By Friday, my resignation letter was neatly typed and ready. And so was the press release. Friday morning arrived with the kind of stillness that felt almost deliberate, like the universe was holding its breath. I walked into Apex Dynamics' glass-fronted building one last time, dressed in a tailored navy suit I'd bought specifically for this moment. My heels clicked against the marble lobby floor, echoing through the space. A few people waved or called out good morning, unaware that by the end of the day, the air in this place would feel very different. I took the elevator up to the executive floor, passing the familiar scent of roasted coffee drifting from the break room. My resignation letter was tucked in a cream envelope in my leather bag, but it wasn't the most powerful weapon I carried that day. That weapon was already loaded, primed, and ready to fire. It was sitting in the hands of Stratagem Innovations' PR team, scheduled to go live at 12 p.m. sharp. Martin Ellison's assistant greeted me with her usual polite smile and ushered me into his office. He was standing near the window, looking out over the city like a man surveying his empire. When he turned, his expression was an odd mix of forced warmth and barely concealed smugness. "Clara," he said, gesturing toward one of the armchairs. "Please, sit." I didn't. Instead, I placed the envelope neatly on his desk and met his eyes. "That's my formal resignation," I said calmly. The smugness faltered. "Your resignation?" He picked up the envelope but didn't open it right away. "I thought we'd discussed this on Monday. We're offering you a generous severance package." "You don't need to." "I'm not here for a severance," I interrupted, my tone even. "I'm here to leave on my terms." He finally opened the envelope and skimmed the letter. His lips tightened as if he'd bitten into something sour. "Effective immediately?" "Yes." There was a pause, then he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "I'm sorry to see you go, Clara. But you should know your project is a property of Apex Dynamics. We'll continue to develop it in your absence." I felt a flicker of satisfaction in my chest. "Actually, Martin, the version you have is already outdated. The improvements I've been working on, the real breakthroughs, are under a patent filed in my name. Sole inventor. Sole rights holder." His eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "I'm not." I allowed a small, measured smile. "And as of noon today, Stratagem Innovations will own exclusive licensing rights to that patent." Any company wanting to use the technology, including Apex, will have to negotiate with them. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. I watched as the meaning sank in, and saw the color drain from his face. "You've made a mistake," he said finally, his voice low. "I don't think so," I replied. "But you're welcome to test that in court. I hear intellectual property cases can drag on for years. In the meantime, good luck rebuilding your core tech from scratch." I left his office without waiting for a response. The sound of my heels against the hallway tile was sharper now, each step pulling me further from the years of late nights and broken promises. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone buzzed right on schedule. Stratagem's press release was live. I opened the link and read the headline. Stratagem Innovations acquires exclusive rights to Whitmore algorithm, Clara Whitmore named Chief Innovation Officer. The article was everything Gregory and I had planned, clear, strategic, and impossible for Apex to spin in their favor. It detailed my role as the sole inventor, emphasized the competitive edge the technology provided, and made it very clear that any business wishing to use it would need to go through Stratagem. The signing bonus, the equity, the royalties, they were hinted at but not disclosed, letting speculation do the rest. By lunchtime, my phone was exploding with messages. Former colleagues sent shocked texts, "Is this true?" Hannah's came with a dozen exclamation points and a voice note full of squeals. Even people I barely knew in the industry were reaching out to congratulate me or fish for details. But my favorite moment came around 2 p.m., when I saw Martin's name flash across my screen. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded the call directly to Stratagem's legal department, per Gregory's instructions. Let the lawyers handle it. I had more important things to do, like meeting with my new team to outline the next phase of development. That afternoon, I visited Stratagem's headquarters for the first time as an official member of the leadership team. The office was sleek and modern, buzzing with energy and ambition. Gregory met me in the lobby, his handshake firm and his smile genuine. "You've stirred up quite a storm," he said as we walked toward my new office. "Good," I replied. "Let them feel it." From my window, I could see Apex Dynamics building across the city. It looked smaller from here, almost insignificant. For years, I'd thought of that place as the center of my professional universe. Now, it was just another competitor scrambling to survive in a game they thought they controlled. That night, I opened a bottle of champagne in my apartment and poured myself a glass. The city lights glittered outside, and for the first time in months, I felt completely free. Not just from Apex, but from the version of myself that believed loyalty would always be repaid in kind. I'd learned the truth the hard way, but I'd also learned how to turn betrayal into power. And the best part? This was only the beginning. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Stratagem Innovations moved quickly, integrating my algorithm into their existing platforms and launching a marketing campaign that made waves across the industry. Every article, every interview, every feature mentioned my name. Clara Whitmore, the mind behind the Whitmore algorithm. My work was no longer hidden behind a corporate logo. It was mine, and the world knew it. But over at Apex Dynamics, the cracks were starting to show. By the second week, industry news outlets were already reporting on internal instability and stockholder concerns. The company's shares had dropped by 15% practically overnight. Their clients, many of whom relied on my algorithm for predictive modeling, were panicking at the thought of losing access to it. Martin Ellison must have been living in crisis mode. Rumors swirled about emergency board meetings, frantic calls to software engineers, and hastily assembled development teams trying to replicate what they'd lost. But without version 2.0, they were chasing shadows. The original algorithm still worked, but it was like trying to race a horse-drawn carriage against a bullet train. One morning, Gregory walked into my office holding his phone. "Guess who's trying to book a licensing meeting?" he said, grinning. I raised an eyebrow. Apex? Bingo. They've asked for urgent discussions regarding access to proprietary technology. The irony was delicious. I leaned back in my chair. Tell them our rates start at 3 times the industry standard. And that we're not in a rush. Gregory chuckled, already drafting the email. I love working with you. When the news broke that Apex Dynamics had signed a licensing deal with Stratagem Innovations complete with a public acknowledgement of my patent ownership, the industry went wild. Headlines called it the most humiliating concession in Apex's history. Commentators debated whether the company could recover from the PR blow. Stock prices slid further, and a few board members quietly resigned. I didn't gloat publicly. That wasn't my style. But behind closed doors, the satisfaction was intoxicating. I'd gone from nearly being erased to being the single most critical factor in my former employer's survival. And I'd done it without shouting, without burning bridges in a fit of rage, just patience, planning, and precision. Over the next 6 months, Stratagem soared. The Whitmore algorithm became the gold standard, adopted by leading firms across multiple sectors. My former colleagues at Apex, those who had always supported me, began reaching out discreetly. Some were tired of the sinking ship. Others were simply looking for a place where their work would be valued. I made it a point to bring the best of them over. Hannah was the first hire, stepping into a senior analytics role that paid more than she'd ever made at Apex. One by one, I built a powerhouse team, many of whom I'd personally trained years before. Watching them thrive here felt like closing a loop, righting a wrong that had started long before that fateful email. By the end of the year, Stratagem's market valuation had overtaken Apex Dynamics. The milestone was symbolic, but to me, it marked the final shift in power. I no longer looked across the skyline and saw the Apex building as a looming shadow. Now it was just another office block, home to a company that had once underestimated the wrong person. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers about Martin, how he'd become more withdrawn, how his temper had grown shorter. Someone told me he'd been pressured into early retirement by the board. If that was true, I couldn't say I was surprised. In business, leaders who gamble and lose on that scale rarely keep their seats warm for long. One evening, I was leaving the Stratagem building when I saw Hannah standing by the elevator, smiling. You know, she said, people talk about what you did like it's some kind of legend. The way you turned everything around. The way you played it so perfectly. I laughed softly. It wasn't perfect. It was necessary. She tilted her head. Still. You've become a bit of a cautionary tale. Every CEO out there has heard it: value your innovators or watch them walk away and take the future with them. The thought made me smile all the way to the parking lot. Because if there was one thing I'd learned, it was that power isn't always about holding the loudest megaphone, it's about knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the work. In my new role, I didn't just focus on building technology. I focused on building a culture where no one had to fear being erased from their own ideas. Where credit was given, where loyalty was earned, and where innovation was a shared triumph, not a bargaining chip. Months turned into a year, and the Whitmore algorithm continued to evolve under my leadership. But for me, the true victory wasn't in the profits or the headlines, it was in the knowledge that I'd taken control of my story. Apex Dynamics had tried to write me out of my own legacy. I'd taken the pen back. And now, every time I looked at what we'd built at Stratagem, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: they'd never see it coming, but they'd never forget what happened. Moral lesson. Hello guys, thank you for listening to this story. What happened to me at Apex Dynamics wasn't just about business, it was about self-worth, resilience, and the courage to protect what's yours. Betrayal can feel like a breaking point, but sometimes it's the turning point you never knew you needed. Always document your work, protect your rights, and never assume loyalty will shield you from greed. Build quietly, move strategically, and when the time comes, let your success speak for you. If this story inspired you, remember this: the best revenge isn't anger, it's building something so strong that the people who underestimated you have no choice but to respect it. Protect your ideas, value your worth, and never let anyone make you feel replaceable. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and comment below with what you think the key lesson is. Your voice matters, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.